Nearby Lucas. You're not nearby, are you? Far away, fucking hell.
Yes, I'm far away.
It's been a long day. We've been working for an hour and a half already. What are we talking about today?
We are going to be talking about the very hairy Chewbacca.
Yeah, let's do it. According to Star Wars canon, Wookiees are a hardy, long-lived species that hails from a planet with skyscraper-sized trees that can rip a man limb from limb. All factors that led to the Wookiee known as Chewbacca inadvertently becoming Bigfoot. But the first thing I need to mention is that this particular story hails from a part of Star Wars mythology that is no longer canon. In fact, it wasn't canon when that mythology was canon. So it's like double non-canon, which I think evens out and makes it canon again. Yeah, I'm really not sure how Star Wars canon works. I just know that Disney took a weed whacker to the universe because it was like more messy and tangled than a Wookiee's arsehole after a particularly heavy shit, and I don't blame them.
Oh no, Karl, that is a revolting mental image.
And one of the things that I find most frustrating about Star Wars is when fans are like, but there's so much good stuff they could pluck from this extended universe, like, and there's so much shit stuff that they don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
That is correct.
There's so much, like, Lucas, we played through The Force Unleashed together. How was that canon for you? How was that story? Just that fan fiction?
Is that the one with two endings?
It is, yeah.
Even though there is a sequel.
I think the bad ending's the one that's not canon and the good ending is, but it's annoying because the bad ending is the interesting one.
Yes.
Because it lets the main character be evil, but like Star Wars is so hamstrung by it's like, no, it's a story about heroes. And it's like, but they're boring because they don't ever do anything interesting.
Ha ha ha.
That's the George Lucas storytelling right there. And it's also one of those things where the actual story itself is really fucking bad because it all has to tie back into like the Rebellion and the original trilogy. And it's like, that universe is so hamstrung by its obsession with those three movies and that like 30-year period in a supposed like entire galaxy of interesting stories and characters.
The Disney trilogy really shit the bed.
Lucas, somehow Palpatine returned. A spoiler! They revealed in Fortnite, which means Fortnite is officially more canon than this story we're talking about.
Ha ha ha, yes.
But I need to talk about The Force Unleashed though, because like the guy who plays the apprentice, Sam Witwer, is a huge Star Wars nerd. Like he fucking loves Star Wars, and he's been involved with the series in numerous ways. Like, I think he's the voice of Emperor Palpatine and Darth Maul in like some of the cartoons and stuff. And he's always on Twitter whenever there was like a new episode of The Mandalorian or Boba Fett released, like noticing like little details in the background that could make The Apprentice canon.
Ha ha ha.
Like I want to say that he noticed a specific type of stormtrooper in like one of the later movies that he's like, well, that stormtrooper was officially introduced in The Force Unleashed, which means that The Force Unleashed could be canon in that universe. AKA, bring me back as Starkill, let me be in these movies.
Amazing.
Anyway, bringing it back to this double non-canon story, what we're about to discuss today takes place in a comic book called Into the Great Unknown, which details the final adventure of the smuggler Han Solo. Do you want to hazard a guess at how Han Solo goes down in this like final story?
Was it being replaced by a smooth-talking droid?
No, it wasn't. He goes down fucking swinging though, because he crashes the Millennium Falcon into a wormhole, which results in them being thrown through time and across space and arriving on Earth several hundred years ago, where they get attacked by Native Americans, which fatally wound him, causing Chewbacca to go into a violent, rage-filled frenzy where he throws them all off the edge of a cliff. And that's just the thing. Make this a movie. I want to see a movie where it's just like Chewbacca in the woods, just fighting fuckers.
That sounds sweet.
Because they always talk about how strong and powerful Chewbacca is, but because the actor playing him was like 7 foot tall and had like, fucking arthritis in every single one of his joints, he barely moves. This is supposed to be one of the strongest characters physically in this franchise, and he barely fucking does anything.
I'd love to be tossed around by Daddy Chewbacca.
And one of the things that I really dislike about Star Wars is just the endless nerfing of the fucking bowcaster. Because the bowcaster is one of those ideas where it's so stupid that I love it. It's a crossbow that fires lasers.
The perfect weapon to destroy mankind.
And the in-canon explanation for why bowcasters are near exclusively wielded by Wookiees is that Wookiees are the only race physically strong enough to use one without their arms being like just pulled out of the sockets. And then you just have like an 85-year-old Han Solo using one, no problem.
I like this thing.
I still think it's great though when you have Rey fucking no-scoping fuckers with it. It reminds me of when I used to play Rainbow Six Vegas 2 with my mate, and we both just get light machine guns and blind fire them round a corner.
Ha ha ha.
Or what might be one of the funniest gaming memories I've ever had. When we were playing Terrorist Hunt in Rainbow Six Vegas 2, and we were both like just against a door holding shotguns. And a terrorist opened the door, and we both blind fired shotguns at the same time. But you just saw this terrorist open a door and just 2 shotguns in his face. He just backflips across the room.
Ha ha. Humans are so fragile.
Bringing it back to the story Into the Great Unknown, it's noted that Han Solo does not survive this encounter, but Chewbacca does. And Chewbacca takes it upon himself to protect Han Solo's final resting place, violently attacking anybody who strays too close to it, and eventually just devolving into a feral, animal-like state, which means that some people in that universe were beaten to death by an 8-foot-tall woolly ape trying to protect a spaceship driven by a skeleton. Where's that movie? It'd be too interesting, wouldn't it?
Yes.
It'd be too fun.
Yes.
And Star Wars can't do anything fun or interesting, even with its existing characters. And have you ever had one of those moments of just complete clarity in regards to your thoughts on something? When someone just says something that immediately sums up your thoughts on it so much more succinctly and perfectly than you ever could.
No, I have not experienced that.
Well, I had that in regards to Star Wars, where I was watching a playthrough of KOTOR with Wooly and Pat from the Best Friends, where they're like 40 hours into the game and they're looking out on like all of space, and just Pat just says, and can you believe it, in this wide universe, only 3 people matter. And I just at that moment went, fuck Star Wars. That's exactly like, so I went, yeah, that's it. This entire unit, 3 people matter. That's all. It's just every story revolves on this same fucking family feud that's been happening. And it's like, oh, and that just completely summed it up for me. I just stopped giving a fuck about Star Wars at that exact moment. And I probably wouldn't interact with anything Star Wars related if not for the fact we constantly get asked about it because it's such a big part of pop culture. But Lucas, do you want to hazard a guess at what happens next in the story Into the Great Unknown?
I would guess that the story would continue in the present day.
Yes, and Chewbacca eventually becomes the cryptid known as Bigfoot in North American folklore and legend, which leads to, I shit you not, Lucas, Indiana Jones deciding to investigate. And Indiana Jones goes to investigate the stories about this giant woolly man that apparently protects a great secret treasure somewhere in the North American woods. And he finds the skeleton of Han Solo and comments on the fact that he feels a strange familiarity with it, which is one of those things where I think we mentioned this in the last video we recorded, like Joe, the meme face of like, oh!
Yes.
Which is so prevalent with Star Wars fans. Like, do you know that's because Han Solo and Indiana Jones are played by the same? It's like, yes, we know, it's so fucking obvious.
So did Daddy Chewbacca tear the human into pieces and devour his tender flesh?
I don't know what happened. Because the story just ends with Indiana Jones doing that and Chewbacca looking on from a distance and Indiana Jones deciding to keep the secret. Which makes him a great archaeologist in my book. Like, he discovers literal world-changing technology. He's like, no thanks. I should protect it because this giant fucking woolly mammoth thing is angry about it.
Ha ha ha.
While this story is no longer canon, or canon if you go with my theory that it's double non-canon, making it canon, it does have a connection to the Star Wars universe in a roundabout way, because the story itself was directly inspired by a story told by Peter Mayhew, and that is that when they were filming Return of the Jedi, Joe, like the scenes on Endor in the woods.
Yes.
When he was filming those scenes in costume, he had to constantly be surrounded by people wearing orange vests. And he himself had to wear an orange vest, and they had to send out warnings to local hunters and hunting stations saying, we're filming a movie where a guy's going to be dressed like a big dog creature. Please don't shoot it. And the story, as Peter Mayhew tells it, is that they had to keep telling people he's not Bigfoot because people kept mistaking him for Bigfoot and tried to shoot him.
Ha ha ha.
So far away, Lucas, do you have any favourite moments from Star Wars that are no longer canon or that you wish weren't canon?
I wish that they hadn't retconned Rey's backstory. They could have at least made her secretly a droid.
I am in complete agreement with you there, Monfrere, because I think that her story makes more sense and is better thematically if she's a nobody, because she's supposed to be the one restarting the Jedi line. And the idea that anybody can be a Jedi fits so well with that concept, because Luke was a nobody until they decided, no, fuck it, he's Darth Vader's son. It's like, God damn it. And you see it, it's just that connected thread that goes all the way through the series, like only 3 people matter.
They should have destroyed all humans and replaced them with droids.
Yeah, you can, put the series in the hands of new characters and tell their stories and keep telling stories in this universe where you're not hamstrung by the reliance on old callback and references that make people do the meme face of which is why I was really excited for the show The Mandalorian right up until, and I think there's been enough time now where this, if it is a spoiler, you had your chance to watch it. Luke Skywalker turns up at the end of season 2. And then you've got the Book of Boba Fett where all it is callback and references, and you're like, can you not just tell an original story? You've built this huge universe, just tell an interesting story from it. And the idea of the Mandalorians themselves is so fucking cool and interesting and an underexplored, underutilized aspect of that universe. And no, bring Boba Fett back. The thing is, Boba Fett spends half of that series not in it, because they realise how shit the character is and how thin on the ground all of his backstory and stuff is, so he's barely in it. Because I was so excited for The Mandalorian, cool. It's it's just it's getting Star Wars back to its roots of just being a space western with hints of Kurosawa films and stuff like that in there, and the wandering samurai archetype. Right up until it's no, Luke Skywalker's here, and it's just shitty CGI Mark Hamill talking to fucking Grogu. Telling him how important he is, and oh, you remind me of someone I used to know. It's we know you're talking about Yoda, but you know that they're making that show for the do you know he means Yoda when he says that? It's yes, we do. Oh God, this is the singular most successful popular franchise on the fucking planet. We know what he's talking about. And that's the thing, Star Wars it has more cultural value and a bigger cultural footprint as memes than it does more as a story. The prequel trilogy has more value as a meme than it does as a piece of artwork in its own right. And the ultimate example of that is, and I hope we can put clips in of this because they're fucking hilarious, is the behind the scenes demo reels for the CGI for those movies, which I contend are better than the movies themselves because they're so hilariously bad. Do you know the fight between Palpatine and Yoda?
Yes.
There is the CGI previs of that, and it's fucking brilliant because it's just this really stiff CGI model of Yoda, just wiggling. But I've got an action figure from now, waddling forward, and then just starts throwing shit everywhere. And when he does the backflips in the fight, just the entire model gets picked up and spun around. And it's I would watch an entire movie of that because it's so much more interesting. It's the fight on Mustafar, they have the same thing, where they just have the stick figures of Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, and they're just spinning around like toys. And that's what Star Wars is now. It's people playing with action figures.
Thank you for watching Fact Fiend. If you do not want to be ragdolled by Daddy Chewbacca, subscribe immediately. I have been Lucas 2.0. Goodbye.